So you began your PBS chat show in 2012 with a certain mission. How did that mission evolve to now that it's premiered in its 8th season? And what perspective has expanded your own soul and therefore the soul of your audience?
Often, as you know, I'm on the other side of the microphone. So it's like to be able to share our story and the path to being this hopeful, safe space for stories is huge. So when I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, when other girls were playing with Barbies, I always had a tennis ball taped to an empty paper towel ring, and that was my mic. I knew at a very young age that this was going to be what I did. But my family, and if you read my bio, had what I call a challenging childhood. And there's multiple authors to this story, and some of those authors are still not comfortable going there. So I do protect that story. But what we went through as a family unit really instilled this empathy in me, and also this vulnerability of where I could trust my story and who I could trust it with. And so as I developed into being this talk show, at the time it was Sally Jesse Raphael that I loved. I'd borrow my mom's glasses. So kept developing the dream. And then when I had the opportunity to really step into television, which I would say started when I was at Good Morning America as an intern. And then I went back to Market 161 and learned how to talk on air, and then moved to Chicago. And when I moved to Chicago, despite what looked horrible at the time with the recession and my job that I thought I was going to get being cut, it also made me start this online talk show that ended up getting picked up by NBC nonstop at the time. And that was this platform of me actually owning a talk show. But then I had this moment where I was walking on North Pond and I had the show, and I got to this point of like, oh my gosh, you're doing it. And I had like this big thump over the head. Holy moly. I don't accidentally have this platform, and I don't accidentally have my story. I need to create that safe space that I needed as a kid. And that is when we shifted focused, created the mission, and moved platforms over to PBS.
So as you launch your latest season, what areas of the country do you get the most feedback from? Why do you think that area has connected so profoundly?
Well, I'll tell you what. We are a show that loves to dig deep, and I have gotten more emails in the last 2 weeks about my clothing decisions. Now, I just want to remind people, I am a woman that loves to dress hip and have fun. And if I want to wear a short skirt, I will. People have put me in a box, I think, because I do, I have kids, I'm a mom, but that doesn't mean I still can't be fun and exciting and all that stuff. So believe it or not, I've had more emails about too much leg showing or whatnot about that. And I just want to clear it up with everybody. Like, I am me. Yes, I love being a safe space for stories, but I'm also really fun too. So besides the wardrobe, we also get a lot of people that want to share their story. We're not a nonprofit, Pat, but I do think as we develop, because we've been doing this now 8 seasons and nationally 3 years, as we really work towards our goal, which is be the strongest voice of hope for the nation, I think there will be a wing that we start having a referral program where other people can, air out their story, because we can only cover so many per year, and people are writing into us as that advocate for their story. And we always say this to people, whether it's on social or on TV, however they digest us, is that their story matters. And we truly believe that. And so we have a ton of feedback, just really of people wanting to be heard and be seen. And they see people that are going there with their story on our show, and it's making them boldly walk into theirs.
As you expand your broadcasting base, you recently began a segment on WGN Radio. What was the origin of this segment, and what can listeners expect from it?
Well, so one thing I love is, like, just because the cameras are not on does not mean the inspiration or hope stops. So this idea of doing crossovers kind of came to me when we were working on our podcast, The Whitney Rat, because what we realized, there's so much inspiration when the cameras aren't rolling, and there's so much hope that can be found in the everyday. So when we were developing our podcast, I thought, let's reach out to some of my friends in the media industry and see if we can do some crossovers with them. We do our Whitney's Wish List, the Whitney Reynolds Show special on WGN TV. So it just made sense when WGN Radio and John said, yeah, let's do Wednesdays with Whitney. Now we get to bring our topics and our inspiration to radio. And what's really cool is I think a whole different DMA, because I have gotten so much feedback after I get off on air, and they'll send me over what people have said to the WGN radio crew. And it makes me so happy because, again, if we want to be the strongest voice of hope, that doesn't mean it stops with television. So with WGN radio, I'm thrilled to be coming on Wednesdays and bringing it all.
All righty. You cite a personal story from childhood, as you just mentioned, as the impetus for creating the space in your chat show. Without getting too personal on the issue, why do you think your experience created this intense desire to create the style that became your media?
So we were one of the first that experienced what we did. As a country now, there are more people that are going through similar situations. And I have to say, my parent really paved a strong path. My mom doubled down on the mental health component of going through something traumatic. And as an 8-year-old, I went into therapy, and I have to say that was ahead of the time too. Now, mental health is one of those like buzzwords. We're like, yeah, mental health. But when I was young, it was not. It was almost this thing of like, whoa, what's terribly wrong with you if you're going to therapy? And really, when I got to this point and I was in high school and I was president of my school and I was on the cheerleading squad, I had other people that had heard of our story from Dallas, and we lived in like Oklahoma and Dallas or other neighboring cities. And the parents said, Whitney, will you take a moment and just let my child know they will be okay? And it wasn't that I had arrived or made it through. It was this, you can go through really tough things and make it to the other side and help the person after you. And so really when that was going on, it was probably this back knowledge of what I was really going to be walking into eventually. Because at that time still, my dream was still just to be on TV, maybe E! News, maybe a real estate show. But it was not to be this voice of hope. And now, once I got thumped over the head, it was like, oh, all the roads led me here.
Let's talk a bit about your nonprofit, Together at Peace. The loss of loved ones is one of the most difficult mental health situations that humans endure. What have you learned about loss, not only in your own life, but in general, on how people can get to a better place regarding it?
Together at Peace has been a partner of the Whitney Reynolds Show for over 3 years. And what I love that Christine and the Together at Peace Foundation is doing, they are really understanding that as long as we are living, we are going to encounter loss because it's just inevitable with life. And what they're doing is they're keeping the loved ones and their memories alive and really creating a community for people for hopeful bereavement. So it's really been a game changer even for me with working with them, because I've experienced loss, and I know that sounds silly, but like when I lost my 17-year-old Shih Tzu, I was absolutely devastated. Like I had that dog since I was 18. And it's not that like the deaths of my grandparents were not near as profound, but having that companion all the time with me. And I tell you what, Together at Peace during that time, actually, I went to their website and I was going through some of their podcasts, and I realized, yes, I am mourning the loss of my dog, but it's not silly. It's as humans, we all mourn loss and grief and handle it differently, and we compact it sometimes. And to have that community just like openly talk about it, and none of them laughed when I was talking about Puffy Doolittle, and as my journey has, as I've gotten older, I have lost grandparents. I have, and especially with the show too, when we're telling deep stories that involve health, we have lost guests that have previously been on our show. And to know that they've created a safe space for people to get together, and then to also give them templates to how they can honor those loved ones. So it doesn't just stop with the community. It can also be creating a walk in your loved one's name. And it's really just these beautiful, at the core though, they also remind you that the memories are still alive and that there's little signs here that they're with us.
You are an intuitive and expressive marketer. How do you make sure that your image in the marketplace, vis-a-vis appearances, fashion, etc., coincides with the real people you want other folks to know?
Well, that's a great question. And that's something that I've grappled with as I've gotten older. Because like I mentioned earlier, of not that people think I'm like this like mother that should wear turtlenecks, even though I'm wearing one today. But it is one of those things is I got to be true to myself. I got to honor who I am. And I do agree, like when we're reaching people, we are a nationally syndicated show that now airs at the same time around the nation at the same time, like which was huge for us because it used to be like people would
Right.
PBS stations would pick when they want to air us, and being this same time at the same time, we don't know who's watching us. So at this, I mean, we have our ratings, and I'm really happy. And we do have
Good.
our DMA, like, but for the most part, I got to stay true to who I am. And I am a woman that wears many hats. I do love fashion. I just because you're on a public broadcast platform doesn't mean that you have to live a small life. And I think sometimes people, they want to put you in a box of what they think you should be for them. But that's the thing is like, I got to be true to who I am. But
Yeah.
I do know that I played much smaller when I was in my 20s because I was very worried about that. But I had this coming of, and they say it's as you get closer to 40, and I'm 38. And I tell you, the closer I get to 40, the more confident I am. And it's not this mentality of if you don't like me, then go. It's just I'm being true to me.
Now that you have an adult perspective on the former elements of your life, what values learned in Oklahoma are intuitive in how you conduct your life? And what elements of that life do you believe needed the most adjustment when you went to a more urban and cosmopolitan atmosphere?
Love that I was raised in the Bible Belt. There are some weird theories as I've grown. Now I'm a non-denominational person, but with that, what it did is it gave me a ton of structure of where I'm rooted and what I stay rooted in, because the world can be throwing things at you a million times an hour, but I am rooted in my faith and this fact that God is for me and who can be against me. So with that, Oklahoma, I would have to say, as I went to church every Sunday and sat on the second row, that was huge for my upbringing. What I love about being urban and being in the city is the expression of some of those values have changed over the years of this all-inclusive love. And we can do that. I said, I became a non-denominational Christian now, and I just love that all are welcome and that, people can live vastly different life, but their story matters and God cares for them too. And I think moving to a city and having my eyes wide open to it all has been super cool as I've been planting these new kind of views with my kids and seeing that their friends are from all corners of the city.
Again, a great answer. Beautiful. Finally, what is an example of a well-known woman that inspires you?
It's a great question. So I'm going to say the first person that came to mind, and this was from my last call I had. Somebody was asking me about my daughter's name, Marlo. And I sat down with Marlo Thomas when I was pregnant with her and
Wow.
just fell in love with her spirit of going, going, going. She wrote a book that was called It Ain't Over Until It's Over. And that was a long time ago that I was interviewing her for that. But I was just captivated with this woman who really focuses on moving the dial forward, not just for her, likeness or whatever, or writing a book. No, she was actually giving stories of women that kept going after things looked like they should have stopped. Now, take that a level deeper with Marlo. Her life is so philanthropic. When she had this stage, it's easy to say, I have a stage, I'm going to keep it all for me. And she has given so much back. And then also just being a champion for others. She didn't have to take my interview back in the day. I wasn't a nationally syndicated talk show host, and she did. And she sewed into my life. And therefore, we now have another legacy, another Marlo. My daughter currently wants to be a journalist when she grows up. And I tell you, it's passing down that torch and really showing other women that they too can do it. And I think Marlo Thomas is a prime example of that.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2025.